Every president at some point had somebody changing their nappy, had somebody wiping the puke off their face. And if somebody hadn't made that sacrifice for them, they wouldn't be where they are.
Hello and welcome back. And I'm so happy you're here with me today. Today's conversation is one of those episodes that I genuinely wish I had 5 years ago. My guest is Gifty Enright. She is a coach, author, TEDx speaker, and has actually lived the thing she teaches now. She spent 30 years in corporate, had everything on paper that was supposed to make her happy. Her career, the kids, the life, and was quietly falling apart behind the scenes, tracking 14 health symptoms on a spreadsheet, going from doctor to doctor, wondering why no one had answers. So she went and found them herself. She wrote The Octopus on a Treadmill, a book, which, yes, is exactly as relatable as it sounds. And now she helps working women and mothers stop running themselves into the ground and start actually building lives that feel good to be in. We just had a really wonderful, deep conversation about superpower mother. And we are capable of so much, we do so much, and often we just don't realize. This episode is for you if you're building a business or a career while also trying to be a present mom, and you're starting to wonder if there's a way to do all this without burning yourself to the ground. We talk about why so many capable, brilliant women are secretly running on empty, and it's not what you think. Gifty says it comes down to self-esteem, and she'll explain exactly what she means. We talk about guilt, why it shows up when you're actually growing, and how to stop letting it pull you back. We talk about perimenopause, about breaking generational cycles, about knowing what you actually want for once, and we talk about the smallest possible micro step you can take today if you have zero time and zero energy. If this episode resonates with you, and I think it really will, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, there's a little plus sign at the top of the Apple Podcast app. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. It genuinely means so much to me, and it helps more women like you find this show.
Stop the battle within your soul. You know it's all in your head. Being sad doesn't make you smart. It seems your heart just needs a fresh start.
Gifty, thank you so much for joining me today. I am really happy you could make the time today to talk to me about how you specifically work with women in the career space and how you support them. Just leading a healthier, happier, more balanced life. There's a lot we can talk about. You've written a book and you coach and mentor working women. And you basically help them when they're tired of being tired. So tell me, firstly, I would love to know, how did you find your way into this space? What's been your journey to do this kind of work? And thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, so how did I find my way into this space? Good question. I found my way through this space just through my life's journey. In that, so when I talk to working women and mothers, about the experiences, this is my lived experience. There's nothing academic about this. I have lived this stuff. But I mean, I did the corporate thing for about 30 years. And yes, I am 105 years old. And at one point, I found myself, there I was with a big job and everything the society said I had to have, with the kids and the husband, everything. And I wasn't happy. And it wasn't, I wasn't happy. I wasn't well physically in myself either. I was tracking like 14 symptoms on a spreadsheet, and I was going from doctor to doctor. It was just insane. And so I thought something has got to give. I just can't carry on like this, And so it took me on a journey to find out, because women's health is not that well serviced by the health system anyway. I mean, I can only talk about UK. I can't talk about everywhere else. But there is a gender gap globally anyway when it comes to the health system. And so some of our issues are not that well managed or known about because they still use male data, to generalize a lot of things. And so I had to go on my own journey to find out how to manage my body, how to manage my issues and all that kind of stuff. And that's how come I wrote the book, because I felt that other women needed to know better, manage better, because otherwise you're there working all the hours God sent, and for what, because you can't even enjoy the life because your body is letting you down, and everything you're working for, you end up resenting because, there's an emptiness in it if you can't enjoy it. And so that's how I ended up on this journey, because I wanted to help other women, perhaps not be falling into the pitfalls that I fell into, So, I mean, I wrote my book, and then after the book, I got asked to do a TEDx. And then after that, then I started being invited to different women's organizations to come and speak. And then years ago, I trained as a coach and did nothing with it. Just went and did the corporate thing, because, you get paid whether you turn up or not. So you didn't have to find your own clients there either. So I thought I'd just do the corporate thing, it was easier. But when I started speaking, sometimes after a talk, people will come to me at the end of the speech and want to ask me questions that I couldn't go in depth into, and so I went back and dusted off my coaching certificate and then started coaching. So, yeah.
And what do you find the most fulfilling part in your work, the work that you do now?
When a woman gets it, that is fulfilling, because women don't get it. They still think, and it's just the way society conditions us. We're conditioned to be good girls, right? So we actually think our lives are supposed to be there just to service other lives, And so when we have to do something for ourselves, we feel guilty about it. And we think, oh, no, I'm supposed to be doing that, looking after the kids, looking after my husband, attending to my boss, whatever. Anything apart from focus on ourselves, because focusing on ourselves is wrong. That's how we're conditioned. But when a woman gets this, she realizes that if you don't put yourself at the center of your life and start taking care of yourself, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And so if you're coming outside in, as in looking after everybody and then whatever is left is what's left for yourself, you're actually not serving people well, particularly your children, because you will be depleted and whatever you're doing is coming from a place of resentment. And so that service you're giving out is actually contaminated. And in the workplace, it doesn't matter. Give all the contaminated service you want. But for your children, it matters because it affects their self-esteem. Whatever is going on, children are always personalizing it, thinking it's their fault. So when mommy is tired, when mommy is angry, whatever it is, their child thinks it's their fault. And so if you don't want to be affecting that child's self-esteem, it's your duty to look after yourself so you can serve from a replenished place, right? And when women really get that, that is what I find fulfilling.
Yes, so I think that's important for us all to hear now, because essentially, really, it's such a, like, sometimes we think we're doing this for the other, just for ourselves, but we're actually really doing it for our children. this healthy behavior, looking after ourselves. And I think that's important that really everybody understands that. Like, women need to really let that sink into our systems. We are doing this for our children just as much as we do it for ourselves, for our own health, right?
Yeah, and also when you're doing it for the children, now two things here. If you've got girls, you're giving them permission then to stop that nonsense. And do you know what I mean? Stop the cycle, break the cycle, and have boundaries and take time for themselves, right? If you have girls. If you have boys, you're teaching them to treat the women in their lives better. Do you know, and allow them space and the boundaries and all that. These are the same men that will go into the workplace and hold 75% of the C-suite, right? These are the same men that will be implementing those policies that the women need. And who else is going to educate them about this but their mothers, right? And so if their mothers have been busy sacrificing, they go into the workplace and they expect every woman to sacrifice and da-da-da. So we need to break the cycle, and the power is with us women to actually do that. And yes, we don't, those of us in it now, you know, that is how we were conditioned and all that. But if we break it now, then the next generation don't have to continue with that cycle.
Yes.
That toxic cycle.
Yes, and it is toxic, because I think many of us, we have really experienced this through our mothers, particularly, because it is a different generation. And, you know, women now, especially in our 40s, like we had that mom that gave everything to the husband and did everything and completely forgot about herself. This is the kind of mother we grew up with, right? Because that was the system. So the women that you work with now, so, you know, you've written a book, The Octopus on a Treadmill, which I love that title. But you're basically talking about holistically approaching healing and health and well-being for women. And you talk about food and exercise, emotional well-being, mental well-being, but also time management. Where do you feel women have the greatest need today?
Well, so it's everywhere, basically. So, I mean, let's start with the body, for example. If you're not feeling well in your body, right, everything is exacerbated. Right? If you're feeling burnt out and overwhelmed, the smallest thing, you know, you'd be snapping at that child. Whatever the boss is asking for is too much. You know, you hate your husband, even though the poor man has done nothing. And simply because you are tired, you know, your hormones are all over the place and all the rest of it. And so for me, the physical bit is very, very important. And the body's been given to us to, you know, serve us in this life, to allow us to enjoy this life. And so if you're not taking time to look after your body, to feed it the right stuff, to exercise the body, to rest it, then it's not going to be able to serve you well, do you know? And if it's not serving you well, you will be carrying those 14 symptoms that I was. So when I'm coaching women, they think, oh yeah, God, you know, I came to you, I wanted promotion, I wanted to whatever in my job, and you're asking me to eat kale. And I'm asking you to do that because we need to build this body, because when you feel strong in your body, you will have strong psychology. Right? It's very rare for you to have a strong psychology in a weak body. All right, because the body informs a lot of stuff. And so if you feel strong, then when the challenge is coming, you're feeling strong anyway. So there is that. But then there's also, if you like, the emotional management side of things, right? And so whatever you're thinking, your body's responding to. And so if you're not taking time to manage your mind, right, your body's just there responding to what you're thinking. And so that is also very, very important for you to manage what is going on up here, so your body gets the correct instruction to react correctly, as it were. So they're all kind of, so normally you talk about mind, body, spirit, it is all interlinked. And then to manage your mind, what is going to manage your mind? What is going to make you think the right thoughts? So that depends on your philosophy. What philosophy are you imbibing? What is it, right? Because I give you a simple example. I believe my body is a temple. Now, I don't say that in a facetious way, but if your body is a temple, nobody is going and dumping rubbish in a temple, right? Exactly. So if you're not dumping rubbish in the temple, you will not be feeding your body rubbish. So that belief, right, affects the way you're thinking, as in what food am I choosing to put in this body? And then the body responds accordingly, right? So it is all linked.
Wow. I've never heard it explained in this kind of way. You know, we're getting all this health advice and well-being advice from all sorts of angles, mostly still from men. Like you said in the beginning, right? Like you said in the beginning, actually. And I also read that so much research in the past, I think until like the 90s or something, has mainly been done just on men. And it's insane to believe. No wonder, like how women, that we're waking up to the fact how we're struggling now with, and firstly start to understand all this perimenopause situation and what that actually means for us and how it actually really deeply affects us, right? Because now we're starting to research all these things. It's crazy. What do you think is like the biggest difference between men and women and the kind of support that we need? Especially you working with women in the career space, like.
Yeah. I think men and women are completely different animals. Actually, we're completely different animals. There's a biological side of things, we're built differently. And then there's a societal side of things in terms of conditioning. So that's also different. And so they are brought up in a certain way and they're told to expect certain things and respect and ability and all that is conferred onto them. Whereas women, you have to go and earn that respect, right? So you don't just walk into a room and everybody is you. If a man and a woman walk into the room and people are expecting, head of something, they would always project it onto the man as the head of the department and never the woman, right? So there is that societal expectation and all these biases that women face, et cetera, in the workplace. So it is very different if you look at biology, what we go through, and we're the ones that for 9 months carry the baby. The men don't do that. Even the good ones, they're there, they're with you, they support you, but you are the one going through the mechanics and your body changing and all the rest of it, right? And then you go into the workplace afterwards and your life is changed. You've actually birthed a whole human. Your biology is changed, but you go in there, you're expected to carry on like nothing has changed, right? Which is just insane. And men never have that pressure. They have that continuity. They start their career and they just have that continuity and keep climbing and climbing because there is some woman whose life will be there to facilitate that man climbing the ladder, And so we're very different in terms of what happens to us biologically and the way society treats us, and there's the expectation. Now, for us women, teenage, you have the whole period thing going on. This is when it starts, because there's never any let up, right? And then if you're unlucky in the childbirth years, there might be fertility treatments and the vagaries of that in terms of all those hormone injections and all the rest of it. But even if you're lucky and you don't have to have fertility and you just go through and have the children, there's that whole body changing and all that kind of stuff. And then when you come out of that, there is the menopause waiting for you, right? And then when you come out of that, suddenly you become invisible as a woman. It's like, you walk into a room, it's like, yeah, whatever. And then people are not even seeing you. So there are all these different life stages that women have to negotiate. Right. And without the right philosophy, without the right support, both physically, emotionally, and spiritually, you can fall off the wagon and lose yourself, somewhere. And I mean, men, again, these stages don't affect them. There's no period, yes, fertility treatment, they get affected as well, but it's still the woman's body that takes the hammering, right? They don't have the menopause, they have the andropause, but it's nowhere near what we have. And then when they come out of all that, become a 60-year-old woman with your gray hair where suddenly you're invisible. A man with the gray hair is a silver fox. So we're just completely different animals, and society insists on treating us differently. And that's why, for me, I want to empower women to own all those stages in their lives, manage themselves properly, and actually stand in their power in all those phases, because we're very powerful beings. Without us, the world doesn't go round. And these men, they need us to, for their lives to keep going, they need us. And so the women have to stand in their power and start negotiating.
This episode is produced by Sunny Chapter, a creative studio for women who have a lot to say and a story worth telling. I love deep conversations, finding the red thread in an emotional story and turning that into something that flows easy and sells your value. A few years ago, when stepping into this space, I noticed something particularly introverted, sensitive women like me struggle with. It's building visibility because it drains them. Content creation feels like a second job that they never applied for, and they hate performing on camera like a content creator. And here's what I've also noticed. When content creation feels like a waste of time for you, or marketing feels performative, that bleeds into your content, and people feel that in your energy on the screen. This is when I started doing my podcast interviews with founders, exploring their stories, extracting their value, inspiring others through their journeys. And I realized that's exactly what it takes to bring out your most authentic self, because that happens in conversation and not alone. So that's where we start. One honest conversation, a calm, safe space for your nervous system, instead of camera performance sucking you dry. You already have the expertise. Your story just needs a little sunlight. Small steps create authority. You just need to start. So one conversation with me can unlock weeks of content, saving you time and energy. And your energy truly stays yours. And if you're interested in building visibility and creating really, truly authentic content, then find Sunny Chapter in the show notes and get in touch with me. I'd love to support you. Now let's get back to the episode. Yes, we do. And you also just mentioned when you talked about that, how the different versions of success as well, and the different journeys and paths of career success and how we get there, right? And basically, the path that women take is full of interruptions all the time, full of change. So really, we could call ourselves the change master, because the amount of times we adapt to change, but we don't take credibility for it enough, clearly, right? It just became so aware to me now when you were talking through all these different stages. I'm like, wow, actually, how can there can be no mother be out there and saying, oh, I'm not I don't really like change. Well, actually, you're living it all the time without even realizing it, right?
You don't have a choice.
Yes, in the biggest possible way, you are adapting and changing and embracing the new chapter.
Uh-huh.
When women are in the career space, and probably also at a time they might look for help sometimes, with someone like a mentor like you, at what point this high functioning behavior that we have, does that become self-betrayal? And how do we put the brakes on before we run into a burnout? How do I recognize that as a woman?
Yeah, so the high functioning behavior, like you said, becomes self-betrayal because where we derive our self-esteem is not quite right. And I had to find this out for myself the painful way because, and again, it's just societal expectations because I thought I had to tick all these boxes. I had to have the big high flying job, whatever. And, the car, the house, all those things, right? Because that's where we're drawing that self-esteem from rather than our impact. Right. And a lot of women, because again, what we do is taken for granted, we don't recognize our impact. So when I'm working with women, first of all, is to show them how important they are to everything else that's going on and how they're at the center of a lot of people's world. And now without them, a lot of people's worlds would just not work, right? And so they have to know how important they are and their impact. And that is where their self-esteem should be rooted rather than all these other societal things that people are, expecting of them, because those things are transient, right? So if let's say you did a career thing and high flying, whatever, and then you had kids and decided to come and stay at home to look after the children, there's that loss of identity because suddenly at the dinner party, you're not going to stand there and say, I am the executive or whatchamacallit of whoever, right? That's gone now. Now you are the chief nappy changer, chief, somebody puke on you and chief bomb wiper, whatever, right? That is your new job now. And you need to own that and understand that somebody is got to be the chief nappy changer. Every president at some point had somebody changing their nappy, had somebody wiping the puke off their face. And if somebody hadn't made that sacrifice for them, they wouldn't be where they are, right? So, the Kennedys, their mother, she said like her job literally was to bring up presidents. That was her job. And then can you imagine that? And if that was the job spec, right? Your job is you're bringing up presidents, and that was the job spec, and of everything you had to do, teach them table manners, they'll be able to have diplomatic relationships and stop nuclear weapons, whatever. Do you know, that is a full-on, full-time job. And she recognized that, right? So another mother said to me, my job is to bring up the next, whoever it is, that person, those skills they need to be that human, to do that job, that is bred into them by a parent somewhere. But somehow that very important parenting job is not recognized in society because nobody's paying for that and it's discounted. And so women do not flex that. Do you see what I mean? They don't own it like this is an important job. I'm at the dinner party and I'm going to tell you I'm a full-time mother and I'm rocking it. Right? I'm cheap nappy change and I'm rocking it. They don't own it. And that is a shame because if you owned that, you will not be burning yourself out trying to prove the I can do it all thing. No. Because at any point, whichever bit you're choosing to inhabit is by choice. And so if you're doing the career thing and you're a mother as well, you know that, hang on, I am doing two very important things. And it's not like, oh, I pretend this one doesn't happen. Like for years, people didn't even know I had kids. Honestly, in the workplace, it just didn't speak about it, whatever. I was competing toe-to-toe with the men, right? This is 25 years ago. nobody was going to use the fact that I had kids against me. I had to be competitive with the men, Those days, now we have diversity and inclusion and all that lovely stuff and flexible working. In my day, there wasn't. And if you weren't there going toe to toe with the men, you basically couldn't cut it. And so women getting that competitiveness on top of having a full-time role at home, that kind of high functioning thing was burning them out. And basically it's to start, once you start owning that child rearing piece and understanding that that is a very part of society and people are going to respect you for that, whether they like it or not. Once you own that, then you don't feel that you have to overcompensate. You don't feel that you have to prove anything. And if you have to leave early and people are looking at you side-eye because you're leaving early, you're sashaying out of there because it's like, mate, I'm doing a very important job. I'm bringing up the next Einstein. You better show me that respect. There you go.
I love that. I think that's the part everybody needs to hear now. Yeah, we're not taking enough credit. We really have to start shifting our thoughts towards making, just because everybody else pretends it's not an important thing, like we need to really get clear on that. And the more we talk about it, the more we that becomes part of us, that belief, then that will hopefully bit by bit shift, and change. You talk a lot about the traditional definitions of success as well. And what kind of behavior would you say women still to this day, and maybe what you just talked about is one of them, what kind of behavior do we still portray and display that are still quietly sabotaging our own health and well-being and happiness? What would you say?
Yeah. So for me, success, and I've had to grow into success, because when I was young, I was a shallow version of success. Basically be successful career-wise, right? That was my definition of success. But that is a very one-dimensional definition of success. Now, I define success by impact. Because there are people who are very successful financially, but what is their impact? It's very shallow lives and very hedonistic lives, and it's not making the world a better place. It's all about take. So you can have your big yachts and have the parties and all the rest of it, but what are you doing for the rest of humanity? How are you making anybody's life better? And if you come to the impact bit, then you realize that anybody can make an impact. Anybody. You don't need money to make an impact. You don't need that big job to make an impact. You can make an impact where you are right now. And I think this is where we are blessed as women, because just by assuming the mothering role, you are changing a life right there. And that's a huge impact. And so if you measure your success by the impact you're making, the number of fully functioning humans that you are helping to create in this world, right? That, for me, is true success. So if you are dribbling in a nursing home, nobody cares about your job title. You could have been the CEO of whoever. Do they care? When you're 89 and dribbling, no. But that is where people would have spent all their life force, right? Now, all those people that when you were CEO or whatever it was, and, pandering to your ego and stuff like that, when you're in the nursing home, those people will not be there. The people that will be there will be your close family, the people that actually you were there for, right? The people whose bums you wiped, right? They will be the one. And so if you want to know how successful you've been, who is beating a path to your door in your nursing home? Right? Or who, when you were in your 80s or whatever, is still insisting you have to live with me. I'm not even putting you in a nursing home. As inconvenient as it is, whatever it is, you were here with me until you pop your mortal clocks. Right? So that, if you want to think about success, if you think from that side and come backwards and engineer your life that way, you will be successful.
Yes. Yeah, that actually made me quite emotional now, because you start to think about success quite differently, really. You move success out of this space of just work, because it's so much more. And it's, for me, like instantly, of course, yes, my daughter, but at the same time, I started thinking of the very close friends that I have that would probably be standing there, and that would. So I think, yeah, and at the same time, you start to realize, like, maybe where you have gaps still, and where we are still, where we have opportunity, I think, still to rethink our own version of success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everybody's got that opportunity now, because we forget the big jobs, the big career, all the money and all those things we look for. Those things are not an end in themselves. Those things are only to service our lives. They're supposed to help us live better, right? But we spend a lot of our life energy chasing those things. And when we get them, we're wiped out. There's nothing left. We can't even live anymore. Do you know? So when you're working all the hours God sent and you're frazzled and you don't have time to enjoy your life. And that was me. Whenever I was left alone to sit on the sofa, I'll fall asleep. I was that exhausted. And when my children are calling me, I'm like, what? Leave me alone. Mommy's tired. Do you know? And I always say there's an apology to my sons that I need to write that for all the times that I wasn't present. I was there physically. I was there, but I wasn't present. And it's not just the working mothers that have that. Even the stay-at-home mothers as well. Being present, being physically there doesn't mean you're present, right? And we're not present because that part of our lives, we don't actually realize how important it is. And if we knew those children that have been given to us, to take care of, right? Their well-being, that whole thing is dependent on us and how we model our lives, because our children, they're not what we tell them, they're who we are. If you took that responsibility seriously, when you're speaking to your child, you will look at them. You will not be on the phone and looking on. No. To make them know they're important. They're standing in front of you. They warrant your attention and all the rest of it. But for me, in those years when my kids were young and stuff like that, my attention was elsewhere. Yes, I was there. Yes, I was taking my financial responsibilities. Yes, I was taking my physical responsibilities. Emotional responsibilities, not sure I was, because I was just knackered, completely knackered. In crisis mode all the time. So yes, if something was going down, I would be there and all that. But the normal day-to-day boring stuff, a child, when they've gone and picked the worm from the garden and they want you to appreciate the worm and you're on yet another work email. And those are the bits I want to go back and redo. I want to put that work email aside and fully appreciate that worm for the child, right? And so that is what I want to teach mothers, because, those were the mistakes I did, because my priorities at that time were back to front.
And that's so beautiful that you said that now. And this is, too, for me, my daughter might still pick up that worm. So I need to really just remember that next time. No, but it's true. And I recognize myself a lot in the things that you say now, especially for women that particularly I do like work, and I like my work that I do.
Yeah.
And then it's particularly hard to push that to the side and go, no, cherish this little time that we have with them, these small moments that mean the world to them, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're already doing so much of a better job than our mothers did, because we were just kind of there somewhere. I don't know, half the time, I think my mom didn't even know what I was doing, even when I was 6 years old. I was just somewhere. And, we grew up like that. And I think we're doing a much better job, but still, it's being a lot more aware in these moments.
Yeah, so we're doing a much better job, and then we're not at the same time. So now there's a lot more, and we're packing a lot more into the kids' lives. And, because our mothers, like you say, they knew we were there somewhere, right in the house, rattling about somewhere. And nobody was there managing every hour of your day like they're doing to the kids now from school. And then you go here, you go here, you go here. But a lot of it is that competitive parenting. So my daughter can do this, right? And whereas just literally spending 10 minutes, appreciating that worm would, for their self-esteem, done a lot more, than shunting them from one class to another, one after school class to another, And so it is more, more is definitely not more. And when the child, I remember one time turning up at my son's school, and I was actually a rarity in the school. So my husband used to do the drop-offs in the morning, and then my nanny will pick him up, after school. And then I will turn up on, when they have special days in school, and I had to be there and everything like that. But I remember one time turning up, and my son, literally, my youngest, dragging me to one of his friends and going, "This is my mom, this is my..." Right, like I was some rarity. And I thought, oh my God, he wants people to know he has a mom. But this is the thing where it's so important. But at that time for me, it was like one business trip after another. And that's why I was deriving my self-esteem rather than that 5 minutes of that poor boy dragging me, introducing me to his friends so they knew he had a mom. But now I know better. And so I say to these women I coach, you need to choose what is important. You don't have to do everything. Choose what is important and do those things well. And then the rest, delegate. The child doesn't care who's doing the laundry. They really don't care. But for me, one of the things, even in those days, I knew that nobody ever, if my child was sick, it was me that had to take the child to the doctor. And whenever any medical procedure, it had to be me that was there. So certain things you can't or you shouldn't delegate. But other things, and yes, get your partners involved as much as possible, because the more they help you carry the burden, the less you burn out, because you're sharing, and it also helps with their own relationships with their dads. And I was having a chat to a woman today who's saying her husband basically worked away, travel, blah, 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 and now decided to give up his job due to ill health, and now he's home and just getting into everybody's hair because they're not used to him being there. And it's just knowing that here is what it takes to run a home, and you and your partner sitting there and agreeing who's going to do what, and also valuing what it is the woman is doing. And I heard some senior executive, a man, describe it as, when we were working out our family, we decided that I was going to take care of bringing in the finances. I was going to be my job, and her job was going to be the logistics, right? So again, if you have a logistics manager at work, you do not think that the logistics director is less important than the financial controller. No, it is the same. And that is how we need to start thinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very, very true. Very true. I see that in myself too. Like I'm just reflecting every time you talk about it. I'm like, oh my God, yes, that is so true. And we just want to take it all on and we make it all work. And it's always been like that. And it's really about but that's a question I still have to ask you, because that you've talked about the guilt before. But before, I just want to quickly ask you, many women, they might recognize themselves in your book, the octopus on a treadmill, always moving, capable, always doing, always busy, right? And they might not reading, all the things, and they go, yeah, that's true. And then they go back to leading their busy, overwhelmed, overpacked, overloaded lives. Why is that? And what are we still resisting today? What change can we still make, and why are we not implementing?
Yeah. Why is that? And this will surprise you. It's a self-esteem problem. Really. It's a self-esteem problem. These people don't feel enough. And so what it is, we're trying to prove something to someone. Hence the over-managing, the over-scheduling, because it's like, look at me, I'm doing all those things. Because deep down, without those things, there's a vacuum. Right? So it's a self-esteem problem. And if you work on that and know who you are and understand your impact, you stop burning yourself out trying to prove anything to anybody. So that is my short answer to that very long question. It really is a self-esteem problem. And so going back to the start, when I was talking about you need to do the physical, and then you need to do the emotional, and what it is you think and all that, all those over managing and running around, those are all symptoms, right, of us not feeling enough.